Daf Samach Dalet Amud Aleph, 3 lines from the top. Elam Marov. So we're in the middle of the sugya. We had this case where the Akum Lachman Baristak, he was an Akum, and he refused to rent out his reshus in the Movli, and the people were looking for an Eitzah, how they can carry in the Movli. So Rava rejected Abaya's Eitzah. Elam Marava, so he rejected Abaya's Eitzah to be Mevalta Reshus to one. He said, what is the Eitzah? Leisel Chad Minai Lekarvli. Let one of the members of the Movi go and try to become a friend, develop a friendship with this Akum, and therefore he befriended with him, and then asked to borrow the Reshus permission to use a place in his Chatzar, to be able to use things in his Chatzar, and therefore then actually put something there, store something there in Lachman Aristak's Chatzar, and by doing this, you become similar to someone who's a schir lakita, an employee or a part-time employee. And once you have a case where you have an akum and there's an employee, then a schira v'lakita, they can be mishtatev in the Eruv. They can mishtatev in the Eruv, and that's sufficient. And we don't need, therefore, to rent the reshus from the Yomi Masechet. So that is the eights over here that have one of the members of the Movi befriend Lachman Aristak, and therefore ask him reshus to put something in his chatzar. He'll become like a schir v'lakita, and then he, on his own, can then be mishtatev in the Eruv, and they don't have to worry about the reshus of the Oivik Kachavim. And the Rashba points out, even though normally storing something in and itself, that alone is not enough to be considered to be a resident. When we say about with the Eruv, what's the requirement to be mishtatif in the Eruv? It has to be someone who's either sleeping in the place or eating in the place. But over here, since the requirement for the Oivik Kachavim is not the ikar requirement to be mishtatif in there, it's only shalei yelamed lemimaisav. We don't have the same chumras and the same stringencies as we have on the ikar Eruv. On the ikar Eruv, to be mishtatif, you have to be mamish a resident. Over here, in order to now circumvent this problem of the Oivik Kachavim, that we don't want him to live, that we don't want the Yidden to live with him in the same chatzar, we don't need a mamish to be mishtatif in the Eruv. And even if someone is not a primary resident, even if he's a sachira v'lakita of the Oivik Kachavim, which he only even has the reshus to use the chatzar, that's enough to have him be the one to mishtatif, so that we can therefore eliminate the usage of the Oivik Kachavim, and he's not treated to be part of this movi or part of this chatzar. Amalei Abayla Rav Yosef, continuing on with the halacha of schir v'lakita, he says, "Hayushem chamisha schir v'chamisha lakita mao." Let's say if there is more than one. Give an example of 5, but meaning if there's more than one, what is the halacha? Do we say in such a case that if there's more than one, that they all have to be mishtatif in the Eruv, or is it enough of even one does? Meaning, if you have more than one, let's say 5 people who have a reshus to live there, living in the Akum's in his dwelling, do they all have to be mishtatif in the Eruv, or is it enough that one is? If they said that the schir v'lakita, the employee, is considered to be the resident, they said it as far as being mekel, that therefore they can be mishtatif in the Eruv, and therefore you can bypass the akum, the Dovid Anochri. They said it lahakel, yom schir v'lakita lahachmer. Did they say it as far as being machmer as well? So therefore, it's not required that to have all of them, and even one is enough. It's enough. They can be mishtatif in the Eruv, and it's sufficient. He says, "This is shmaitza. How wonderful is it's a wonderful shmaitza." Amr of Yerim Shmuel, Shasa Revius, Yain al Yer. He said another halach is, he said if a person drinks a revius of yain, he should not pass on halachas. And so a person drinks that amount of wine, he won't be able to think clearly, and he shouldn't pass on halachas. Amr of Nachman, loy ma'al shmaitza. He says, no, this is not malya. It's not excellent. He said, until he drank a revius yayin, loy tzlil datai, his mind was not clear. He was able to paskin clearly after he drank a measure of yayin. So he said that this shmaitza is not malyos. Amarle Rava said to Rav Nachman, my time, Amar Marach, he said, why did you say this? Why did you say that this is not malyos? He says, why did you say that this is not a special, it's not excellent? Well, Amar Ravacha Bar Chanina, he said, my dechsiv v'raya zaynes yavet hayin. It says if a person, he frequents zaynes, he will lose his wealth. So it says, the way Rashi explains it, in Mishlei, zaynes is written mole with two vowels. So we darshan kol oimish shmua zuna, zaynes shmua zuna v'zueina. We darshan zu zayin vav twice. Zuna v'zueina ma'avid hayin shel Torah. He's ma'avid hayin. He loses the wealth. He loses the wealth of Torah, and don't forget his learning. Amalei hadri bi. He said, I'm chayzer. I retracted. I shouldn't have said that. So it's not proper to say that this shmua is excellent and this is not. The Marshal says, even if he doesn't say that this one is not, even by saying that this one is noah, that alone is not proper, because the implication is he's saying this is noah. The implication is that the other one is not noah. So therefore, they should not say that this shmaitza is, even to say, not only to say loy malya hashmaitza, like Rav Nachman said, loy malya hashmaitza, and not only that is not proper, but even to say that this one is no is also not proper, because by implication this is no and the other one is not no. So therefore, when it says over here, when it says koimashu is no v'zu eina no, the Marshal says, even if he doesn't say zu eina no, he just says no, then that alone is not proper, because by implication he's saying that something else is not no. Rashash asks on that because we find many places it says Kama Malya Hai Shmaitza, that the Amoyroim do praise a Shmaitza. So we do see that they do praise it. So even praising a Shmaitza, if according to the Marshal is not proper, how could they praise a Shmaitza? But perhaps we can answer it as follows. What the Marshal is saying is, a person says zu no. Now the Gemara says, he says zu no, zu eina no. That's not proper, because he's saying a shmaitz is not no. Marshal says, he says zu no, so that's mashma by implication, zu no, but something else is not no. It's also not proper. But when a person says kama malya hashmaitza, if he's saying kama malya is wonderful, is excellent, that doesn't imply that another shmaitza is not noah. It's not implying that this is not noah. It's saying this is excellent. This is yotzim min haklal. So if a person says kama malya hashmaitza, he's saying that this is special. Well, to say something is special, there's no implication that something else is not noah. It's not beautiful. It's not special. Well, not everything is yotzim min haklal. So maybe what the Marshal means to say is to say zu noah, even if he doesn't say zu eina noah, is not proper, because by implication something else is not noah. To say kama malya hashmaitza is something that is extraordinary. To say something extraordinary is okay, because by implication something else is not extraordinary. Okay, but it doesn't imply that it's not noah. Let's see, weiter Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna, Sholse al Yispal. If a person drinks wine, he should not daven. Sholso al yispal v'im yispal tfilosa tfilo. But if he did, so l'chadchila he shouldn't. But if he did, the tefillah is still considered a tefillah. But shikar, if he's drunk, al yispal, he shouldn't daven. V'im yispal tfilosa toyeva. And if he did, it's a toyeva. So what does it mean that it's a toyeva? The Tosfos explains, meaning, and he's not yaitza. And meaning, therefore, he has to daven again. He was not Yotz's tefillah. So if he's only sholso lechatchila, he shouldn't daven, but it's still considered tefillah as Yotze. If he's a shikar, he's not Yotze. How do we define? How do we define sholso and shikars? They said as follows. They were leaving each other. They were departing from and by the bridge of the Yufti River. Amru, they said, let each one of us say a chiddush, something that the friend has not heard, and say it over to him as we're departing from each other. When a person departs from his friend, he should do it and say over as var halacha. Because he says over that, they'll remember the person. When a person he says this, when he thinks of this sugya, he'll remind himself of this person, so that's how he'll remember the person. He'll remember that this person told him over this halacha. Pasuk Chad v'Omer, once he initiated, and he said, how do we define shalsa v'shikur? Shalsa kol sheyoch l'dar b'lfnei melech. If he's shalsa, he drank, but he has a presence of mind that he can talk in a dignified way, and even in front of the king, where he has to be very careful how he speaks. He's still capable of doing that. That's only a shalsa. But shikar kol sheina yochel l'dar b'lfnei melech. Shikar is considered not mamish that he's drunk, even if he's not intoxicated to that level. But if he can't speak in a way that's dignified, in a way that's required by speaking in front of a king, he shouldn't daven either. He said a different halach. He said a machzat b'nechsei ager. When a ger dies, so he has, if the children that he had before he was megayer are not considered his children. So if he dies, what he has is hefker. He doesn't have any yarshim. So anybody can, the first the first one who takes it can keep it. So a person who's machzik, he has a windfall. All of a sudden, he has his wealth that he didn't work for, he didn't earn, so people might give him an ayin hara, or people might look at it in a strange way. So if he wants to preserve his wealth, he should do something, he should do a mitzvah. What should he do so that it should remain in his hands and it should not be lost? He should buy a sefer Torah with him. If he buys a sefer Torah with it, or uses the money to buy a sefer Torah, then the schus of the mitzvah, he'll be able to keep the money, and the money will remain in his hands. Omra Rav Sheshes, he says, afilu, if you say even if it's a type of windfall which is not so extraordinary as maxim nichsa ger, even as a husband who has wealth through marriage, he married a woman who's wealthy or inherited wealth, and he also has this type of a windfall, he should also do a mitzvah to preserve his wealth. Rav Amar Filo Avid Iske v'Ravach, he says even if you went into a business deal, he invested in something, and he has an extraordinary profit, and he has some wealth that's also somewhat of a windfall, he should also do a mitzvah with it. Rav Amar Filo Matzah Mitzvah, he says even if he found a lost object, he found something that was lost, and he was able to keep it, that's also considered a windfall, and he also needs a protection, he needs a shmira, he should also do a mitzvah. Amar of Nachbar Yischa Filo Kosovo Tefillin. He says even if it's not a sefer Torah is special. It's expensive, and other people use it. Its tefillin is not so expensive, so as the Meiri explains, even though it's not so expensive, and it's more used primarily by the person himself, not for the public. Nevertheless, it still will afford him that type of a shmir. Where do we see in a pasuk that doing a mitzvah, that if you do a mitzvah with your possessions, that you'll therefore be able to retain them, you'll retain your possessions if you do a mitzvah with them? Because we see in the pasuk, it says, Vayidar Yisrael neder, and the Klal Yisrael made a neder. After Aaron HaKohen died, they made a neder. They went to war against Arad. And they made a neder saying that if Hashem will give them into their hands, if they will be victorious, they will donate it to the Mishkan. And Hashem answered their tefillos. They were victorious. They acquire all of these spoils, all of the nechosim from Arad after they captured them. They did the mitzvah with them. So the tefillah was answered, and they acquired these nechosim. So you see that the proper way is, and to retain the chosim and to be victorious and have the tefillahs answered, is through doing a mitzvah with it. If a person drinks wine, then if he travels a distance of a mil, he walks 2,000 amas, or he goes to sleep. It doesn't say for how long at this point, but we'll discuss it a little later. So in these cases, we say that it's mefigen es yain. It will dissipate the effects of the wine. So the effects of the wine will be worn off, and he will not be intoxicated. That's only if he drank a revius of wine. But if he drank more than revius, if it's more than revius, it has the opposite effect. If he walks, he's walking, or if he sleeps, it will increase the effects of the yain. He'll be more intoxicated. If he's walking, so he drank that more than revius, so therefore the walking will wear him down, and therefore he will. Therefore, the effects of the wine will overcome him more, because he'll be weaker. Or if he sleeps, he's sleeping. He'll put him into a slumber, and he will not be able to resist the effects of the intoxication. So therefore, when we say it's beneficial, that's only up to revius, but more than revius, it has the opposite effect.